So we've been thinking about this a lot lately, and please bear with me on this one. It might be a long chit-chat session. But yeah, we thought about how every time an idol gets into a relationship, the internet just explodes. You know, like suddenly everyone has an opinion. Some are supportive, some are hurt, some are, mad. And timelines turn into like a war zone overnight. The pro versus anti. And this is not to invalidate fans because we get it. People get attached. People feel close to these artists. It's all but normal. That part is human. But at the same time, we can't help but ask ourselves, why does this one thing trigger such an extreme reaction compared to literally everything else they do? What really bothers me, personally, is when I see fans saying things like, "Oh, I'm done supporting them," the moment dating news comes out. And I always wonder, what does that even mean? Like, was your support conditional this whole time? Was it only there as long as, the artist stayed single and fit into this version you had of them in your head? Because if support disappears the second they choose a personal relationship, then maybe it wasn't really about the music or the artistry at all, you know? It starts to feel more like, for lack of a better term, ownership. Like their success was okay, their growth was okay, as long as their personal life stayed frozen in a way that made some fans comfortable. And the thing is, idols never signed a contract promising they wouldn't fall in love. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't agree to put their entire emotional life on hold just so people wouldn't feel disappointed. But somehow dating gets treated like a scandal, like they did something wrong, when in reality, they just did something incredibly normal. I think that kind of reaction says more about how fandom culture sometimes blurs the line between admiration and entitlement. Supporting someone shouldn't come with rules about who they're allowed to love. And when fans threaten to withdraw support over something so personal, it turns love into leverage. And that's a really uncomfortable place to be. And at the core of all this is another uncomfortable truth. Idols are famous, yes, but they are not public property. You know what I mean? Just because someone shares their talent, their performances, their personality on camera, doesn't mean every part of their life is suddenly up for public ownership or approval. And I can't even imagine how stressful that can be. Somewhere along the way, support turns into entitlement. Some fans start feeling like they deserve a say in who an artist dates, how they live, or what choices they make outside of work. And I get how that happens. Parasocial relationships are powerful, you guys. You watch their videos almost every day. You hear their voice constantly, right? They feel familiar. But familiarity is not the same as access, and closeness does not equal control. An idol's job, essentially, is to perform. Their job is to create, to show up on stage and give their best. Their job is not to remain emotionally available to millions of strangers forever. Loving their work doesn't give anyone the right to dictate their personal happiness. And when fans cross that line, it stops being support and starts being possession and manipulation. And you may or may not agree on us on this one, and that's okay. We get it. We all have different views in life. But, what's even sadder is that this mindset often ignores the fact that idols are people with full lives off camera. They have bad days, they have insecurities, they feel loneliness and the same need for connection as anyone else. Fame doesn't and will never replace love or that feeling of being in love. Does that make sense? Applause doesn't replace companionship, and no amount of fan devotion can substitute having someone who knows you when the lights are off and the spotlight is gone. When we treat idols like they belong to us, we forget that the very thing we admire, their humanity, their emotion, their vulnerability, is the first thing we take away from them. And here's the part people don't talk about enough, right? The aftermath. Because when fans react harshly to dating news, it doesn't just end at angry comments or unfollowing, it actually changes how artists move going forward. They start learning very quickly that being honest or open comes with a cost. When every personal choice gets, dissected, criticized, or turned into a moral issue, the safest option becomes silence. So instead of sharing little moments and, joking freely or speaking candidly, artists begin to shell themselves in. Not because they don't care about fans anymore, but because it feels risky to be human in front of people who might punish them for it or even retaliate. Over time, sooner or later, that creates a version of the idol that's more controlled, more distant, more carefully managed. Fans might say they want authenticity, but the environment doesn't actually allow it. Some fans actually don't allow it. You know what I mean? You can't ask someone to be real while also threatening to withdraw support the moment their real life doesn't align with expectations anymore. The more fans demand closeness and access, the more artists are forced to pull away, to survive. And that's the tragedy of it. What's meant to be love and support ends up creating fear and restraint instead. Another thing that always comes up when idols start dating is how quickly fans decide that, they know the full story. Suddenly, everyone has opinions about the person they're with, digging up old posts, rumors, screenshots, or whatever else, and forming a verdict based on fragments. And it's always framed as concern, right? Oh, we're just concerned maybe he or she doesn't know this about this person they're with, right? But a lot of the time, it's really just judgment. It's really just resentment. What gets lost there is a simple truth. The artist actually knows this person. Not the online version, not the headlines, not the worst thing that ever circulated about them. They know them in real life. How they talk, how they treat people, how they show up when no one's watching. People also forget that humans are not static. You know what I mean? Someone having a negative image online doesn't mean they're the same person today. People grow. They may be celebrities, but they also learn. They change. And it feels unfair that a stranger's entire identity can be frozen in time just because the internet decided that's who they are. If this were a friend of yours, for instance, right? You'd probably trust that they've thought things through. You might worry, sure, but you wouldn't immediately assume they're making a terrible decision based on rumors alone. You'd trust their judgment because you trust them. That same grace rarely gets extended to idols or celebrities in general, even though they're adults, who've probably been in far more complex situations than most of us ever will, considering they are constantly under the public's eye. When you strip away the fame, right? And the fan culture for a second, this really isn't that complicated. If this were a normal, everyday situation, your friend, your sibling, someone you care about, dating someone with a bit of a messy reputation, most of us wouldn't immediately turn on them. We'd probably ask questions, maybe raise an eyebrow, but ultimately, we'd trust that they know their own life better than we do. We understand in normal relationships that love is layered, that people see sides of each other that, outsiders never will, that what works for someone doesn't always make sense from the outside looking in, and we accept that because that's how human relationships function. The only reason this feels different with idols is because their lives are constantly under a microscope. Every interaction is observed, recorded, slowed down, interpreted, and debated by thousands or even millions of people who don't actually know them. There's almost no room for privacy, right? No space to make mistakes quietly, no grace period to figure things out like everyone else gets. I think another thing some fans don't always, want to confront is time. Idols aren't frozen in the era we discovered them. They're not staying 20 forever. You know what I mean? And they're not meant to live their entire lives on stage. Behind the schedules, the comebacks, the tours, time is still moving, just like it does for everyone else. A lot of these artists have spent their youth training, you guys, working almost non-stop, sacrificing normal experiences most people take for granted, while others were dating freely, figuring themselves out, or building relationships quietly. Idols were learning choreography until dawn and smiling through exhaustion. So when they finally choose to pursue something personal, it's not selfish. It's really not. In fact, it's long overdue. And it's not hard to imagine that they want what most people want eventually, you know? And that is stability. A partner who sees them as a person, not a brand. Someone who knows them without the stage name or the performance persona. Someone who loves or will love them when they're not an idol anymore. Yes, being a celebrity comes with a price. I'm sure they know that. Public attention, scrutiny, expectations, that's part of the deal. But I don't think the price should be giving up the right to grow older, to fall in love, or to imagine a future that includes more than just applause. And then there's the inevitable future: marriage, family, life after the stage. It's coming for every artist, whether fans are ready for it or not. Eventually, these idols will want more than fleeting relationships. They'll want someone who will share a life with them, someone who sees them as a person first, performer second. And honestly, can you imagine how some fans will react then? If people act this strongly over dating, what happens when the wedding announcements come? And I really believe that it's not just hypothetical. This is reality. And here's the thing, as much as fans love these artists, they can't live their lives for them. They can't control who the artist marries, when they'll settle down, or what kind of private life they choose to have. The stage and the spotlight can't replace a partner, a family, or the kind of intimacy that comes from being seen fully as a person. At the end of the day, you guys, I think it comes down to one simple idea: real support, right? Real support isn't just cheering on the stage or streaming every release. It's also giving idols space to live their lives, to love, to make mistakes, and to be human. It's understanding that their happiness isn't a threat to the fandom. It's part of who they are as people. We don't have to approve of every choice they make, and we don't have to be part of every moment. But we can choose respect, patience, and trust. We can celebrate their music, their talent, and their achievements without feeling entitled to their personal life, you know. We can enjoy the moments they share with us while still letting them have private moments that are just theirs. Supporting someone doesn't mean, it doesn't mean owning them. It doesn't mean living through them. Does that make sense? Supporting someone means loving them enough to step back sometimes, to give them freedom, and to remember that the person we admire on stage is human, period. Because if we can get to a place where we support without controlling, where we admire without, being overbearing or consuming, then maybe having a fandom becomes less about possession and more about genuine connection. And maybe, just maybe, we can actually make being in the spotlight a little less lonely.